What's going on, guys? This is Dan for BladeReviews.com, taking a look at the Kershaw Leek. Now, this particular leek is actually on loan from my good buddy Tom, and Tom is not necessarily a big knife collector. He does own a couple nice knives, but really he just has a couple and he tends to use them, and one of them just happens to be this nice little Kershaw Leek. And the reason why I really wanted to mention Tom here was because this knife strikes me as an all-American kind of knife, and Tom strikes me as like a great, all-American kind of guy. Like, he would definitely be representative of the kind of person who would go out to, a hardware store and pick up a knife like this. And this is a great example of something that's made in America, that is widely available. You could definitely, I think you can pick these up at Walmart and of course any online retailer, but a lot of stores have this knife too. It's a very popular design, and it's also very affordable and accessible to anybody. A lot of people who aren't so into knives, they're not going to spend $50 or $100 on a pocket knife. They'll think that's a little ridiculous, but $25, sure, they'll pay that for a nice quality knife, especially if it's made in America and well built. So to me, this whole thing with Tom, it just kind of embodies, American EDC. So let's take a look at this knife. Let's see why I think it's such a classic and why it's such a great EDC option, and we'll just kind of run through it. So let's start with the blade and the overall specifications here. So we've got a 3-inch blade, an overall length of 7 inches, and a weight of 3.2 ounces. So some guys are going to look at this knife and say, hey, that's kind of chunky for just a little thin knife like this. And, I would say try out the aluminum version. This is a stainless steel version, and they've got an aluminum version that weighs only 2.4 ounces. So if you do that, you're going to cut almost a full ounce off this knife. And I will admit, 3.2 is on the heavy side, but it definitely has a nice feel to it. It's got a quality feel to it. So definitely not going to weigh you down too much, and you've got a nice reassuring feeling when you're holding this blade. So, and speaking of the blade, what we have here is what I like to call a modified Wharncliffe. We've got just a slight amount of belly there. You can see it's not completely straight, and what I really like about this is of course the very fine tip, which is just excellent for a lot of EDC tasks, opening packages and detail work and stuff like that. So it's got a great little tip on there, but it is not really supported by a lot of steel. So if you're not careful, you could definitely bend or break this tip. So something to think about. But for most EDC tasks, I think it's going to be excellent and more than adequate. And you can also see there, it's got this kind of hollow grind. It starts about 2/3 of the way up the blade. Very nice, great slicer. This thing came very sharp, and Tom's been taking good care of it. I actually touched it up a little bit for him, so put a little spice in there for him. So when he gets this knife back, it's going to be just a little bit sharper than he's used to, I think, and hopefully he'll enjoy that. I know having a sharp knife is always fun. So anyhow, this steel, which is 14C28N, has the capability of really holding a nice edge and getting pretty sharp. So I do like it a lot, and it's very common on a lot of Kershaw knives, so I am very familiar with it. Let's take a look at the handle here, and on this stainless steel version, there isn't a whole lot to look at. It's just 2 slabs of stainless steel. There's not much in the way of texturing. All we really have here for traction is a little bit of jimping on the top, on the thumb ramp there, and just a little bit in the choil area as well. And while it doesn't seem like much, I think it does a good job of holding your fingers in place for just most of those normal tasks. Again, this isn't a tactical knife or anything, so I'm not expecting it to have any kind of superpowers with the traction department here. But for most stuff, I think it'll be just fine. And if you see here, the handle is a nice 4-inch. It's big enough for a full grip, and that to me is the most important thing. And I think the handle does a good job of supporting you here. Taking a look at the pocket clip, you can see it is fairly normal looking for a Ken Onion design. It is kind of large, and if you have it in the tip-up configuration, it does ride kind of high, but all in all, it is nice and secure, and it's got good retention. If you want, you can do tip-down carry, and in that case, it rides fairly low, so it's all a matter of preference here. Deployment is accomplished mainly through the flipper, and as you can see there, this is an assisted opening knife, and it does open nice and fast with a little snap. And I like this. You know, it's not a requirement for an EDC knife, and some might think it's a little bit of overkill for an EDC, but it is kind of fun, and you know, it does work quite well. If you're not a fan of the assisted opening, you can always take this knife apart and just pull that little spring out, and you'll just have a normal knife. So there's also a couple thumb studs here. I can't really get at the one on the left side, but if you're right-handed, you definitely can get at the right and use that to open the knife too. But for me, being left-handed, I just prefer the flipper. That's what I like to do. So, and the flipper is very fast, nice and easy. Lockup is done through this this frame lock, this steel frame lock, and it's very secure. There's no blade play. And you can see here, Tom's had this knife for about a year, and the lockup is still pretty early. You know, it's definitely broken in a little bit. To be honest with you though, I haven't seen it when he bought it new, so it's hard to say how early it was when he got it. There's still plenty of life left in this, and the locking mechanism is working just fine, so all in all, pretty solid for a little knife like this. Okay, so let's think about some final thoughts here. Really, like I said, I think this is just a great little all-American EDC. It's light, it's portable, it's made in America, it's affordable, and it just works. So I like it a lot. Tom loves it, and I think if you're looking for a Leek like this, I think you'd like it too. So, alright guys, that's my review. Thanks so much for watching. This is Dan for BladeReviews.com, signing off.